Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Bang on Sale Show. Today, I am with my good friend Fred Copestake. Fred, I was as part of this intro. I was trying to remember how we met each other, how we came across each other. I guess, as with so many of these conversations, it's LinkedIn is the obvious one. But I'm putting you on the spot here. But can you remember how we met?
Yeah, I will have liked or commented on some of your remarkably witty posts, and you will have responded going, "Oh, you're also a scripting genius," and something like that. In our dreams,
There we
it
go.
would have been something. It would have been something like that.
Yeah, awesome. To kick this off, do you want to maybe just a quick intro? Tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, no. So, name is Fred Copestake. It's not chopstick, cupcake, snowflake, or even cheapskate. Yeah, get it right. Copestake. I'm founder of Brindis, which is a sales training consultancy. Last 25 years, been around the world 14 times. Worked in 38 different countries now and trained over 10,000 salespeople, which has been like real privilege to do that, good fun. It's also given me a lot of insight, and that's what's led me to write, well, the 3 books now, because I'm aware of how much sales is changing and the challenges salespeople have. So if I can do my little bit to help them get their head around it, then yeah, it's where I can make my little bit of impact on the world.
Nice, nice. So speaking of your books, I'd really love to talk about ethical selling. Tell us about that. Like, what is it? What's it about? Where did the inspiration come from?
Yeah, well, that's the latest. That was in November 24. That's come out, so it's the latest on recording. And really, it's just the next iteration. It's the next kind of obvious thing for me to talk about because I wrote the first one, which is selling through partnering skills in 2020. This is all about seeing how sales is evolving and becoming more collaborative. So I should have called it collaborative selling, really. But it's about how you use partnering skills to be able to do that. So you sit alongside customers, co-create and work with them rather than trying to sell stuff at them. That came out in 2020, like I say, at the same time as you know what. So it actually didn't make it any less relevant. But yeah, I was locked down, same as everyone else. And I think I got to the end of Tiger King and I thought, you know what? Want for it to use this time more effectively. The world is changing fast. The sales world is changing fast. And that's why I wrote the second one, hybrid selling, which is all about having a more accomplished approach with more elements to it. Uh, And then as I just keep my finger on the pulse of what's happening to help people be bang up to date, can just see the shift towards being more ethical. So this is what customers want. When you look at kind of the practice involved, it's best practice anyway. It works better. So I thought, hang on a minute, let's get that message out there so that we can do some stuff in an industry that doesn't always have the best reputation and just help people to be better at it. Good people do good things in a good way.
Yeah. So ethics. What are some other buzzwords we hear? Integrity, authenticity, things like this, right? So tell us, like, more specifically, like what you cover? What are you talking about in ethical selling?
Yeah, I mean, there was an option to start throwing all those words around, but I think people do get a bit cynical about them. And I
Mm.
do use them, you have to. But to describe it to somebody who's coming to it brand new, I would say it's all about win, win, win. And that gives it an easier way to explain it because a lot of people will understand win, win. They'll go, well, yeah, we get that the customer's got to win. We'll get that the company's got to win. But by adding the third one, it's like, well, yeah, your conscience has got to be winning as well. Because if we haven't got a balance and alignment between those, it isn't sustainable. You're not going to be able to do the job well enough. But if you're doing stuff which kind of puts the tick in the conscience box, it's actually going to put a tick in the customer box and in your company box as well. So describing it like that and kind of looking at good ways of doing stuff, which does involve honesty and integrity and better communication and all that sort of good stuff. That's an easy way for people to get into the thinking of, well, maybe this is something I should start to investigate a bit more.
Yeah. This actually really resonates with me, because, like, I totally I agree with the premise at the very least, and it's something that I've talked to people before about it. Like, for win 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 to really, at least how I understand it, for that to really be a thing, all parties involved need to, I don't know if subscribe or ascribe to is the right word, but to a sense of higher values, higher principles. Which is kind of what you're talking about there. Is like truth, honesty. It's just a sense of basic decency of actually not screwing the other person over. At least that's how I understand it. Am I kind of along the right tracks there? Am I being a bit?
Yeah. No. You are. You are. That's what will sit all behind it. Now, I was quite careful. I do touch on that, and I use the seller code, which Marcus Kauke and then Patrick Bakusis were doing a lot of work on, pulling in all that principle and moral and ethical stuff. I didn't want to go too much into this because knowing salespeople as I do, I'm not going to say they wouldn't be interested. They wouldn't benefit as much from these kind of more ethereal and philosophical discussions than saying, right, well, this is a good idea because of this. All right, yeah, you got it. Right, now do this then. And so I went very tactical. I've gone kind of right. So you do this thing, you do this thing, you do this thing, you do this thing. And then probably you are doing this thing and you can do
Right.
this better. Or here is another way that you can apply this thinking you probably already subscribe to. So yeah, it's very much more handbooky style than philosophical, discussion type thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I like it. And I guess just to hang on that for another second. Does for us as sellers to apply this, and maybe we can get into some of the actual kind of specifics and tactics of this in a minute, but do all parties involved need to hold to these? I guess it's not principles because, like you say, it is more tactical rather than theory or lofty ideas. But you're not always as a seller, you might be trying to hold yourself to a higher standard, but not everybody is going to be like that, right? You're going to be selling to some people that are just unscrupulous or just whatever.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, simple as that is it take two to tango. And so if you're trying to hold yourself to these standards, but they don't, there is going to be a mismatch. So I actually covered that in one of the chapters where I talk about biosafety and kind of informed decision making where you've got to start with the right kind of person. So it starts very much at qualification. And so I just talk about qualification. It's like, oh, yeah, I understand what qualification is. Yeah, but you're doing it for this reason as well. It qualified better was like on this psychological level, then the whole of the relationship and the way in which you can align and do stuff will be better.
okay, how do we apply some of this stuff then?
Well, so, I mean, what I did in the book is classic book structure, I guess. What it is, why it's a good idea. And then I kind of went, well, these are the reasons that you won't. So then I could call those out as bullshit. Because you want to give people the sort of the nudge and the impetus to go and do stuff. And then the basic way of kind of just say, well, let's call out what's false is the simple version is the Goldilocks dilemma. Yeah, Goldilocks 3 bears and the porridge is too hot and too cold. The reason which people and organizations might not subscribe to this and get involved in it is because they'll do, it's too hard or too soft. So when they're saying it's too hard, it's like, oh no, it's going to be too difficult. It's going to be too expensive. There's going to have to be new processes put in place. We're going to have to do a ton of training. Change. People are going to have to change and they won't like it. And you go, well, that stuff's not true. And even if it was, the benefits would outweigh it. But actually, even those aren't true. Then you'd look on the other hand where you got people saying too soft. So, okay, so we're basically saying we need to become passive. We need to become like unassertive. We're going to be pushovers. We're going to be really transparent. So we're going to have to give all our margins away. We're going to lose a ton of money. It's like, no, that's not true either. So you sometimes need to get the bull by the horns and go, right, if that's what you're thinking, let's just correct this now, because otherwise you're not going to go into some of the tactical stuff or the kind of the ethical model, which then lays out here are some ways to think about doing what you do and applying it to whatever sales process you're using already. So this isn't ripping out and substituting MedPick or Miller Hyman or Sandler or Spin or whatever you use. No, it sits alongside it because they can be applied in an ethical manner because the way in which you do them works better normally if you're doing it, applying some of these things I talk about in the model.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have? Again, I don't want to put you on the spot too much here, but what are some real world examples? Like because you're talking about applying this alongside other discovery methodologies or qualification methodologies and whatnot.
Yeah.
So let's say I'm, practically speaking, tactically speaking,
Yeah.
I'm conversation with a new let's say, a lot of the work that I'm doing right now is top of funnel stuff.
Yeah.
Let's say cold calling or doing an initial discovery of something. How can I be applying some of this ethical selling to
Okay.
those?
Cool. Well, probably the easiest way to do it is to just go through what the ethical model is, and then we can start to pull out the sort of parts of each of those sections, and you will see how that works. So yeah, we'll apply it to top funnel if you like.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Cool.
So ethical model, being the oh, I'd say simpleton, being the simple person that I am, probably I'm a simpleton, but being the simple person I am, it spells ethical. E-T-C-H-I-L. E-T-H-I-C-A-L. Can't even spell it. Where we talk about empathetic communication, transparency and integrity, holistic value-centric approach, informed decision-making, collaborative relationship building, adaptive negotiation, and learning and growth. So by giving myself these buckets or giving people these areas that we can start to take what the best practice is and sort of file things in these areas.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now some things can actually work goes in different parts. Yeah, it does. I mean, it's probably more grey, but I think people respond well when you can give them a structure that they can sort of get hold of and they can see the stuff within it. Yeah. So again, let's go into, so what does the book say? I could take this stuff in the book. We go into empathetic communication. So the approach there was to say, and this is all about engaging in active dialogue to understand customer needs and wants. I mean, literally, I've read from your business partner on LinkedIn this morning saying, in a massive conversation with somebody about what it is they do, and decided that really, yes, they kind of wanted something, but the need wasn't big enough. And actually, what was the point in moving to the next step? Something that Sean had said, and absolutely, because what he's doing there is he's got emotional intelligence, got EQ. So we go through, like, this is what EQ is. And what empathy is being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes, understanding what's going on in their world. And this is just, this is a really good idea for salespeople to do that. And how do we do that? Well, we can get better at doing that by questioning and listening. So just in that part of the model, there's bits in there that people go, well, this isn't new. And I'm saying, no, I'm not saying it is. But I'm saying that if you do it and you do it well, then you're putting the tick in the box for selling ethically. And the more consciously you're doing it to try to do the right thing, then the better you will do it and the better the outcomes will be. So there's an example from that point of view.
That's really cool. And it almost means, for what we're doing, of course, we're selling, we're doing outbound on behalf of clients, right? So there's almost that our client becomes the third win in the win-win-win, right? But we don't want to be wasting, say, the prospect's time who we're calling, and we also don't want to be booking a load of trash meetings or people that aren't going to show up or that aren't good fits, right? So for our clients. So yeah, I can definitely see how that applies.
Yeah. Yeah. And then so let's take another example. So if we looked at the T, look at P, transparency and integrity. So yeah, I do have to use those words. You're right about ethical selling. You're going to be using those words. Right, but let's turn it into reality. Or actually, let's look to someone who's turned it into reality really well. I can't talk about transparency without thinking about Todd Capone, who's written Transparency Sale. I think that's a brilliant book. It's really cool. When I interviewed him a bit back, he introduced me to a concept which was to lead with a flaw. FLAW, a fault. And I was, all right, what do you mean? He said, well, if you say to somebody, if you are looking for this, and it's the most important thing for you, we probably aren't the best option. I'd probably choose something better. But if you're also looking for this, this, and this, then absolutely we would be right. And it's genius because it's such a massive trust builder. I mean, it's so counterintuitive to a ton of salespeople. They just wouldn't do it. I tried to explain this. My mate's a dealer principal at a car dealership. He introduced me to some of his team and he said, oh, go and tell them about telling them why you're wrong. I didn't really say that, Matt. That's not quite how it is. But I explained it. And this kid looked at me and he's just like, you're from Planet Zog. Why would I do that? There's a dent in the car. I'm going to stand in front of it. I'm not going to tell somebody why it's not right for them. I'll flog it, don't I? It's like, it's going to come back and bite you. That's why you got bad reputation. But that open, leading with the flaw, look, it's a big trust builder. Well, whatever you do from there, you're already on the right side, aren't you?
Yeah. I feel like we're probably doing a lot of this thing because you're just making me think of an email I sent to somebody just this morning, actually, where it's like, look, it's more on the commercial side. It's like, I don't think that our models are gonna match of what we're both looking for. However, we're still happy to have a conversation, maybe introduce you to people who can help if we can't. Um, but it's about leading with that, right? Setting the right expectations. Well, I really like that. It actually reminds me of, is it a Sandler thing of like going left? You know, the pendulum, right? Is almost pushing people away a little bit. Qualifying out. It's basically part of qualifying out as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Qualifying is such a big deal. I mean, I talk about that. Where do I talk about that? I talk about that in informed decision making. So one of the I from ethical is about informed decision making, which is basically making sure that customers can make decisions with the right information and respecting their autonomy. Okay. But for me, that begins right at the very beginning. So they can make a decision at the very beginning whether we are the right people to be working with. And we can make a right decision as to whether we want to work with them as well. It does take two to tango. Yeah. So yeah, this is all part of the biosafety thing. But by qualifying, then we know that we're working with people where we can give them the right information, not put the pressure on. And this is the kind of the whole, pushy pressure salesperson. No, we've got to give them that space to put the freedom of choice. Doesn't mean we don't challenge. Does not mean we don't challenge. So remember that Goldilocks thing where, it's too soft. No, good salespeople will challenge. They will challenge the customer's thinking. They might push the customer to places which is difficult for them. Difficult because they have to face up to things. We're not pushing them to try to buy something, but we're kind of pushing the thinking for their benefit. And that's what we're doing there. So yeah, it's not a softy approach, ethical side. No, you need to have some robust conversations. They'll be quite tough and quite, well informed and well prepped and well skilled to have them.
Just remind me of the, so it was, I tried to do this in shorthand on my notebook. So is it empathetic, transparency, holistic? You said holistic, didn't you?
A holistic value-centric approach. Yeah. So it's kind of looking at the whole thing that is going to build value for the customer.
Mm.
Yeah. So the main thing in the book is something I borrowed from a guy called Mike Wilkinson, which is that value is a mystery. We don't know what value is. Yeah. Customer might not know what value is, but together what we can do is we can get our heads around it and then we can start to define value. Yeah. In this instance, so that is what we're working towards. And that's what we're co-creating, collaborating on. So this is where we start to think about insight. This is where you're sharing little bits of information, thought starters, stuff they might not know, and bringing something to the party to even the conversation is valuable. Even the conversation you're having, it's not just the solution that you're selling and sell value. It's like, that's what our product sheet says. No, it's talking to you. You're helping me clarify stuff and get my head around it. And that's awesome. Well, that's what I like. Yeah, your solution will drop into place because actually you're positioning yourself as this sense maker, this problem solver. So that's kind of a big piece, which, yeah, you can do in long, complex sales. But yeah, again, let's go back to what you're doing, where you're saying top of funnel, where actually bringing that little insight, that little thing, that spark that's just going to get someone to go, oh, hang a minute, and get the conversation going. Yeah, because ultimately you're funneling towards value, aren't you?
Yeah, it's tricky. I think when you're like approaching someone cold or it's really early in the conversation, because you're almost coming in with a bit of a hypothesis, a bit of an educated guess of what's going to be valuable to them. In some cases, what's valuable to them, they're not even aware of it, or they need to understand why, right? There's some latent pain or some, whatever it might be. So I guess that's where this makes me think of your first book of, is it selling through partnership?
Yeah, I think the partner skills. Yeah.
Partner skills. Yeah. Which is that collaborative part of figuring out what good looks like, essentially. Right.
Okay. It has to begin somewhere, doesn't it? So we could begin with saying, I'm bloody brilliant. My company's awesome. We've got ace products. Let me tell you about this product that's the acest and all this spangly stuff it's got. And you're like, yeah, no thanks. Or, right, I'm going to take an educated guess here. I actually do tell people that they should assume. That whole like ask you me thing. I'm like, that's wrong. Trainers just do it to try and show off. It's wrong. You do assume. But like you said, it's an educated guess. It's an intelligent assumption. It's look, if you're in this world and you're in this role, you probably got this going on in your life. Yeah, I don't know that because I have to deal with a ton of other people that have also got this going on. Oh yeah, right. Well, now we can get that conversation going and see what it's actually like for you and in reality for your company. We've got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's part of value creation.
Yeah, that's cool. It's all about, yeah, I really like Jamal Raymer's stuff, and he talks about, leading. He's more focused on the higher enterprise level selling, but he talks about, leading with a POV, a point of view, right? And that's
Yeah.
basically what you're saying is going in with not being so sheepish and but also not just being like, oh, this is Mark from ABC Limited. We sell these widgets. It's a happy medium between the Goldilocks zone between those two.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, if you go to enterprise, if you're going in at a higher level, well, that's probably a smart idea to do it at enterprise, isn't it? To move the thing forward, you need a point of view. So, and I'm not going to say it's easy to do, but there's techniques you can do to find the thing that the person in probably C-suite is going to respond to. It could be something that's going on outside their company. It'll be an external driver. So regulatory, economic, social, political, environmental, competitive, technological, those things are going on, which are impacting their organization. They're in a position where they need to do something about it. So you can look at what those things are. Tariffs, right? Okay. How is that affecting them? How might they be responding to it? Take a bit of a flyer on that, lead in on that one. Now you're either going to bang on right. Oh yeah, awesome. You get it. Or not quite, but you're not far off and I appreciate your thinking. Or even, no, not really, but I can see how you're thinking. If you're thinking like this, and actually I can share more stuff with you and we could probably get to the place where we need to be. So yeah, it works in different ways. Yeah.
Okay. I'm not going to ask you to reveal too much more because otherwise no one's going to buy the book, right? So,
it's fine. I mean, it is, yeah, kind of about book sales, but it's also about getting good selling out there, isn't it? So yeah, I'm happy either way.
No, it's cool. I can tell it's a labor of love for you. By the way, sorry to keep rubbing my hay fever. It's terrible. It's I thought I was going to get off lightly this year, but it's just hit me the last few days.
Local honey, apparently.
So I've heard, yeah. So
Oh yeah.
Why do people not apply this stuff? Because when you're framing it all like this, it sounds so obvious. And I'm not saying that I do it perfectly or that I do it all the time. We can always be consistent with it, but why do people think that this is, like you mentioned, the guy who looked at you like from Planet Zog or whatever? Why is that?
I don't know. I think, actually, well, I think partly sales does deserve the image it's got. We do some shitty things. We do things and have been trained to do things that is a bit manipulative, that is a bit sneaky beaky. If it's not downright scurrilous, illegal, it's just a bit off. And that is what's considered decent. And it's like, yeah, but it doesn't really work because people do know there's something that's not quite right there, but we think it's a really good idea because there are a lot of techniques that are trained and kind of we feel a bit clever, how we want to overall people. Maybe that's a human nature thing. I don't know. But yeah, we should because we just do some weird stuff and kind of that's what's shared and what's reported because there's a lot of old sales techniques still kind of swimming about there, aren't there?
What would you advise to someone who's, let's say, an account executive? I know this is quite common in SaaS, is the old end of quarter push, right, or end of month push, depending on how you bill it. I know, what are we on the 18th of June right now, and I know that there are going to be hundreds, if not thousands, of AEs across Europe and say the States who are having their managers, their VPs, CROs, whatever, telling them just to offer a discount to get a deal over the line, but that discount is only valid until the end of the month.
Well, that's fine, but don't ever after that try to pretend that you're a consultative salesperson because you're not. You've gone transactional. Yeah, so all this, I'm consultative, I'm buyer-centric, I'm customer-focused, I'm, the advisor. No, you're not, because that's not how you behave. So you can't kind of run with the hounds and run with the fox and hunt with the hounds or something like that. You're not, because the way you're behaving. And I think the organization's got a lot to answer for on this. Because you've got people who probably don't really realize that that's just normal behavior for them. It's all they've ever known. It's like, yeah, we do all this stuff and then we push all this at the end of the month, because that's the way the world works, because we've trained customers to go, why would I buy at full price in the middle of the month? We know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas if you're actually genuinely building value and selling the thing properly, the deal will drop, the deal drops. So it's a tough one because of the way targets and stuff are set. But yeah, I mean, you're kind of making the rod for your own back, aren't you?
Don't hate the player, hate the game.
Yeah, it's. I think this is probably where the management needs to step in, but it's probably what they know as well. And people look at what they know, and they don't look beyond it, and it'll kind of forever be like that. And well, there's other worlds of sailors as well, aren't there, that haven't quite painted themselves into a corner as badly.
Yeah. So I'll ask you kind of how people can learn more about this, how people can apply this. I know that you're working on some special things at the moment. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, well, obviously they can buy the book. It's there, But what I'm really, really proud of actually with it is that the Institute of Ethical Selling are using the ethical framework as the core for what they offer. So the Institute of Ethical Selling, what this is, it's a membership organization purely focused on ethical selling, not trying to cover every other aspect of sales, where members can come along and they will get orientation, certification, and information. So by orientation, what we mean is they'll join and they can go through the e-learning, the training built around the stuff that's in the book. Again, I've cost myself another set of book sales, but I don't care because I like the fact that they can do that, but at the same time, they're being tested on the understanding of that content. When they've gone through that, that's the orientation and the testing, then they get the certification. So what will happen is they'll get access to the Certi Key. So the Certi Key is a badge that they can display. So they can put it into email signatures, can put it on LinkedIn profiles. They can talk about how they're a member and how they've achieved this, which is basically putting a hand up to customers and saying, look, this is the way I operate. This is how I think. This is how I will work. So it will give the customers hopefully kind of confidence in engaging with them and getting them a little bit ahead of the game to then go in, and if they already doing that stuff, brilliant. Or if they've learned some stuff by going through the orientation, they'll do a better job of sales. Then the information piece is like ongoing information with some lives and roundtables and extra e-learning and playbook. That's quite a lot of other stuff that we put in there. So yeah, but I'm really happy that it's been used for that. It's very, very flattering.
Great. And I guess I'll challenge you here a little bit. The Institute of Ethical Selling, why is it better or different to other offerings that are out there? Like, why would I sign up? And who is it going to appeal to? Yeah, what can you tell?
It appeals to any salesperson. Yeah, anybody who's interested in sales might appeal to buyers who can then understand what salespeople should be doing. I actually
Audio's gone. I'm hoping Fred didn't forget to charge his headset.
okay. Ask the question again. Good old script. We can leave it in.
I was going to leave it in, but people can see you. There you go.
They're busy. If somebody who's a customer wanted to book stuff.
Okay.
What was the question? The question was why is it better?
Yeah.
Better,
Different.
I mean,
how would you different?
I was kind of what you said in that it is purely focused on ethical selling. So there are other sales organizations out there, sales professionals. I mean, do a ton of good stuff. Do apprenticeships, lobbying governments. They do training in a ton of other different parts of sales. They do tons of good stuff. Like we in the Institute of Ethical Selling, it's just purely on that. We want to keep it super focused in on that model, on that thinking, and so it will sit alongside what other organizations, like say other sales frameworks are doing. Be nice to think of a ton of training companies would come along and say, "Hey, yeah, can we align with you and kind of include this in what we're doing?" But yeah, of course you can.
And I think some really could or should, because it sounds like you're pulling from different. there's nothing new under the sun, right? And so we're all doing this, but you're pulling from different places, which I like, because I'm almost seeing a little bit of, like I said, some Sandler stuff. You said it can run alongside a medic or med pick. You've referenced a couple of other people that you've kind of borrowed from as well. So I think, yeah, there's no reason why it can't run alongside other methodologies, whatever.
Absolutely designed to do that. Yeah. I mean, who else I call out in there? So I mentioned Tokopedia, Simon Bowen talked about biosafety, mutual action plans. I talked to Tom Williams and people like that about that. So yeah, I'm looking for what best practice and stuff is out there and pulling that in so that we're giving people access to their best thinking. And I reference myself as well. Oh, wait, if you can't write a book and reference one of your other ones, what are you doing?
Of course, of course. Awesome. Thanks, Fred. Any parting words? Anything else you want to share?
No, I mean, you've asked me all the right stuff. You've asked me all the right stuff to talk about the win-win-win, talk about Goldilocks effect, to start to talk about the model, some of the elements in it, and to give an example, real life examples of stuff people can do. So hopefully people have heard the actionable tips. And so that is the whole point of this. It's not theoretical, philosophical, it's technical. And ultimately, it's just kind of all boiling down into the maxim I have for myself, really, which is about good people doing good things in a good way. Different levels, whether you're talking about competent people who are achieving results because they've got a decent process, or is it inherently decent people that are making a big impact because of the way in which they go about doing stuff. And it's very much hitting both those sides.
Final question. What advice could you give to sales leaders these days? And I know that it's going to vary between industries and whatnot, but based on what you're seeing, based on your kind of ethos on everything, what's kind of one little nugget you can throw out?
They take responsibility. And by that, they have got a huge responsibility in a load of things, but I think they've got responsibility for people. They've got responsibility for their people. And so really should be equipping them to help them be the best they possibly can. So whether that's giving them the right coaching, if it's giving them the right training, if it's giving them the right encouragement, if it's setting them up with the right selling model and incentive schemes, it's really look after them, because I think if they're in the right place, they will do a better job and they'll be able to perform ethically, effectively, and, get the results that we're all after.
And notice, people, Fred didn't say, there's something Fred didn't say there. He didn't say tech. He didn't say more tech, more SaaS tools. Didn't come up, right? So it's not about, the fancy new diner or some automation thing, an outreach tool or whatever. It's about, as you said, right, a selling model, the right mindset, the right coaching, the right training. That's what's going to make the biggest difference, right?
Yeah, best takes in our head.
Yeah.
Get that right.
Brilliant. All right, well, thanks for the chat, Fred. Like, comment, subscribe. Really does make a difference. And look forward to seeing you all on the next one. Cheers.